Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Well, welcome back to the show. We are so excited to have our holistic healer here joining us and so much more. Listen up, families, professionals in service. They're here to help children with neurodiversity, learning differences, complex health needs, you name it. She can help with you. You can book a free consultation with Christine LaBey right there on the website. It's spelled CHRISTINELABBE.com. And we are excited to have our founder of Evolve Movement, who's a pediatric NeuroMovement practitioner, a conscious parenting coach, also an author. We're going to talk about that too, and so much more. So Christine wears many hats. Would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners to start today?
Yes, I'm Christine LaBey, and I'm so happy to be here today. One of the main things I wanted to share as well is that I'm actually a parent to a child that has, some severe healthcare needs and who's diagnosed with Rett syndrome. So, for the parents that are out there, I know what it feels like. I see you, and I really know what it's like to go through this journey. I'm also a NeuroMovement practitioner, so I work with children that are neurodiverse. I support them through this modality that is somatic, so it's somatic movement, and we create opportunities for the children to create new neural pathways. This is done through movement. And I'm also a conscious parenting coach, so I support the parents. This is a big gap out there. It's really that parent support. And I understand this firsthand as well. These parents really need that support. They need people to help them see the light on this path, right? Because in those early stages, it can feel quite heavy. And I'm also the founder of Evolve Movement. So Evolve Movement is a beautiful platform for parents to visit where we have some virtual programs for them that can support them at their own pace. So if they're not interested in doing the one-on-one coaching just yet, they can jump on the Evolve Movement website and explore some of those courses and listen to some of those conversations about how to create an optimal learning environment for their child to thrive.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you back here. And by the way, just tell us where you're based out of, but I know you are worldwide with your services, right?
Yes, so I'm based out of Ottawa, Canada, but yes, I absolutely offer services worldwide. So lots of virtual offerings, workshops, and people can check out my website and have a look at what I have to offer.
Great. And for today, what did you kind of want to dive into for our listeners to get started?
You know what? I think it's important to talk about the topic of intention because I think this is something that we don't speak of a lot with parents, right? Because we're led down this path where we see our children from that lens of limitations. So when we're going to therapy, when we're going to the doctor's office, we're often reminded of what our children are not doing. And I think this is very difficult because it tends to shift our intentions.
Yeah.
Towards this idea of fixing our children rather than truly supporting them towards their optimal potential, right? Their innate potential, what is within them, right? What is already there. And so I think it's important to bring awareness to parents just to open them up to this idea that there's so much more to their children and that if they can take their focus away from the limitations, which, is not their fault. Again, the system goes down that path. If they can open up to seeing their children from a new lens, which we can talk about, there's so much that comes with that. It can really change the trajectory, and it can also change how their child develops, how they view themselves, how they, etc. So I think this is important, just that idea of intention.
Exactly. Well, thank you for sharing. I know you shared some great stories. We'll find out about some more families that you've helped as well, and kind of break down the type of coaching you do and, how it's done, because there's one-on-ones, there's groups, right? There's workshops. So where did you want to start with that?
We can start by talking about the one-on-ones a little bit, and I can certainly mention some stories. I've had different parents with different children with different diagnoses, one of which it was a family that had a child with CP, and this child was having multiple therapies, too many. too many therapies. And it came to the point where the child just wanted to play, right? And we forget the importance of play in development. And, this child was having so much therapy that one, it affected his sense of self. So it became always about fixing him, always about looking at what he's not doing, looking at his limitations. He started to resist it. So it was important to have a conversation with the parent to say, less is more. That when you become more intentional about the therapies that you're going to select for your children, so really understanding that your child is also going to be part of that conversation, right? And that the children, those therapies that are not in alignment, usually they're going to resist them quite a bit, right? And so it's really important to listen to our children. And that, again, less is more. So sometimes when we find those specific therapies, those 2 or 3 therapies that work really well and work really well in complement, you can see some magnificent changes. And for parents, sometimes we also have this tendency to do too much, in the sense that we will do everything that we can because otherwise we feel guilty that we didn't try everything. But it's important to remember that there is a specific time for certain therapies, and that if we do too much at the same time, we don't know which one is working and which one is not, right? And so these are just really important things to just take your time, observe your children. This is a co-creation. So it's finding out who are those people going to be that are really going to help that child with their sense of self, to build their confidence, and people who see our children. This is one story, but there are a few others I can talk about as well in terms of intention. I don't know if you want me to share another story.
It's totally up to you. I love hearing them. I think it helps. It's up to you. Thank you.
So another story would be a family that had a child with autism. And, the mother was very worried about him going to school because he had a stutter and
Ah,
he had tics. And so she was really worried about when he was going to start school. She was scared he was going to get bullied. So she signed him up for multiple therapies to fix the tics and to fix the stutter, and lots of speech therapy. And
mm-hmm.
when the boy started school, he ended up being celebrated for who he was.
Yeah.
And those tics and that stutter wasn't really something he wasn't bullied for it at all. And when we actually dig a little deeper, we can see that, mom was bullied as a child.
Yeah.
So this was a fear that mom had because it was something that she experienced. And so in trying to protect her son from experiencing the pain that she had experienced as a child,
Yeah.
she ended up pushing him into all of these therapies without really thinking about, well, what do these do, what does it make him feel when he's doing all of these therapies to fix something about himself, rather than instead having more of this intention of seeing the child, celebrating those things that are there, rather than being so focused on the limitations. Because sometimes we don't realize that when we're focused on the limitations, our child sees themselves that way. They see themselves as broken, right?
Yeah.
And so when they don't even see themselves and those beautiful things that are there, how can we expect them to shine, right? So, to backtrack, it's important for parents to really look at themselves. What am I afraid of? What are these fears? Where are they coming from? What can I look at within myself in terms of, looking
Mm-hmm.
at life from a lens of lack, or, feeling like you have your own self-confidence that might not be optimal, right? Where you start to see things from a different lens. You're not seeing things from a lens of gratitude, right? You're seeing things from a lens of lack.
Yeah.
So our insecurities come up. There's so much that comes up, and it's important for parents to really dig deeper, to really look at those things. What are they experiencing? What are they feeling? What is coming up? What do they wish for their child? And a lot of parents are going to say, well, I want my child to be happy, right? But what is happy? What is happy? Happy is feeling
Mm-hmm.
good about ourselves, right? So it's loving the self. That's key, right? And so if we really think about that, it starts to shift how we're going to support our kids. And these are important stories to bring up for parents, because we are kind of influenced and pushed in a certain direction until we kind of wake up and say, wait a minute, and we start to question, wait, why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, thank you for sharing this. And I love, the work that you're doing and how you're helping so many, because some people might not even know that their child is neurodiverse or may need that. Where does that start? Sometimes it starts at the home, sometimes not until they go to school. Any significant signs that we should be looking for to encourage our parents to be on the lookout, on the alert for maybe, that there is some need of special help there? Is there certain signs? Because I know a lot of us, including my sister, missed it with my son. Not till he went to school did they realize that he had some learning disabilities. So I just don't want parents to feel guilty that they don't figure it out, because a lot of parents don't, right?
Yeah, well, it depends, right? Because you can have children where it's very visible. It'll be physical, you'll see some developmental delays. And so those will be your signs that there's something that might be there. It could be delays in speech, it could be delays in understanding certain things, it could be behavioral. There are many different signs that you might pick up on, and it really varies again on the diagnosis. What are we looking at? And even within a diagnosis like autism, the spectrum is huge. I've never met one child on the spectrum that was the same.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them might have some similarities, but they're all so different to me. And so, you might notice things like regression. That can be another sign, right? These are things that parents can pick up on, but it's important to look at that, and it's okay,
Yep.
right? It's okay if these things are there. I think it's important not to zoom in and just focus on those things. And this kind of loops into the conversation
Yep.
before, right? Is to make sure that as we're noticing these delays, as we're noticing these limitations, we're also very much aware of what is there and what they are doing and those wonderful things that are unique to them, right? To try and keep that balance.
Thank you for that. And let's remind everyone how we can contact you and all the best forms before we continue.
Yes, they can contact me on my website, christinelabe.com, or by email, christine@evolvemovement.ca.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So, what else in particular did you want to make sure that we're aware of? I mean, I know there's a lot that you can help people with, and that you are. And just before we talk more about the services, could you just share? I know your own experience you mentioned with your child, but what else got you into this field? Would you say? I mean, clearly your love and passion to help so many, which is amazing. What were you doing before this?
Oh, wow. My work before this was very different. I was in business. I was a very analytical person, someone that could see patterns and things in a business from a business standpoint. Anyway, this work actually did serve me because now I can see patterns in people and what they're doing. So it's an interesting experience that brought me to where I am, but certainly unrelated in some ways and related in other ways where it helps me to be able to, run my own business. But my daughter was really the inspiration, and I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast with you, but when I first started working with the children, my heart just lit up.
Yeah.
And it was just something about these kids that I thought they were so beautiful. And I just loved being around them. There was something about their energy that was so pure and untainted. And it was that's really what led me to do this work and to really kind of find all the areas that were going to help support these children, right? So that means parents, that means professionals, that means, looking at the whole, looking at the system, so that these children could really be seen. And I think that's what's important to me, is because I really see them. I really see them. I can feel their energy. I can really tune into their essence. And it's so beautiful. And when these children know that you have felt like tuned into their essence, when they know that, it's
Yeah.
instant. It's an instant connection, and it's so much deeper than words that would be spoken
Yeah.
or things that you might be doing. And just for me, the richness of that kind of connection, I
Yeah.
feel almost what's missing, in normal society. And that to me is so beautiful, and it's something that needs to be in people's awareness. right? And
Yeah.
so I just want these kids to shine. That's really where my heart is at.
Oh, thank you so much. I love it. I mean, really, because you're such an honest, genuine person. And as a parent of someone with a neurodivergent child, it's just amazing that you really empathize, more than most, that you're just so here willing to help so many people. And we appreciate that. Now, you're also working not with just the children, but the families itself too, because the parents, the other siblings, need help with this too. So this is, part of the conscious parenting coaching as well, if you want to digress to that.
Yes, and I think it's such an important piece. Again, it's something that's missing in the system right now, right? We grow up in a society where we're programmed to think a certain way, where we're conditioned to think a certain way, where we have beliefs that are imposed on us from a very young age. So even before we have a child that's neurodiverse, we already believe that's something bad.
Hmm.
Right? And so we come into the experience believing that we're coming into something bad. And
Hmm.
just all of these beliefs, all of that programming, all these things need to be deconstructed, right? So that those parents can then really see the path in a different light. And this is the thing, I've talked about writing our own narrative and changing the narrative. So, when we get a diagnosis, sometimes we can be given a prognosis about what our life is going to look like. And that can look pretty dark, right? We're told that our life is going to be difficult or that we may experience more health
Yeah.
issues with children. It really depends on the child's diagnosis, but it really doesn't have to be that way. And, I've heard so many parents come to me and say, I felt so deflated after that appointment.
Yeah.
Right. And these parents are already traumatized. And it's like the system is just, you know, not really contributing to healing the trauma, but more so contributing to the trauma, right? And deepening that trauma. So I think it's really important for parents to be supported and to really have this idea that there is hope. And hope is really important to me because there really is hope. And when you can change your mindset and you can start to see where your feelings are coming from, because oftentimes they have nothing to do with our children, right? Our children are doing things, behaving in a certain way, or things are happening to our children that trigger us.
Yeah.
And those triggers are deep within us that actually come from somewhere else. So when we can start to dig deeper and we can start to observe what those triggers are and become more aware of ourselves, we can start to wake up to a completely different life. And that's when we start to see our children from a new lens, where we're not seeing all of those negative things. We start to really see those positive things. And that's partly because we start to love ourselves more. We start to, love ourselves unconditionally. This is so important, unconditional love of the self, because that's where you're truly loving your child unconditionally.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And we still have plenty of time to let people know. Just to let you know, there are warning signs out there for people that may need some of these services. Do you want to talk about some of that? The overwhelm, the anxiety?
All of that. You know what? I've completely experienced all of those things. Anxiety, overwhelm. My daughter almost passed away last year, and we were in the ICU for quite a few weeks. And, I experienced a near-death experience in the ambulance. And so there was
Yeah.
just, when you take the time to heal yourself and you really begin to be in stillness and become more present and start to feel into the anxiety and understand how to move yourself out of anxiety. It's all about the nervous system and being able to navigate those chaotic moments. You're able to move through the chaos in a very different way. And, I have so much gratitude for the conscious parenting coaching program that I took because it really helped me to and equipped me to be able to navigate that. That's like the worst case scenario. It's the thing that parents fear the most. But the reason why I'm explaining this is because I've experienced, one of the worst things you can experience from an anxiety overwhelmed standpoint. And so that personal experience also empowers me to be able to help others because anxiety is a real thing and PTSD is a real thing. And overwhelm is absolutely a real thing for these parents because they're dealing with so much more than the average parent. And it's important to, voice that.
Exactly. Well, thank you for sharing that as well. And I just, how hard it is. I know it also affects relationship. It affects families, and not everybody is aware of really how they could best support a diverse, child. And I know a lot of it is about shifting, mindsets and helping people through this. But just to let them know, it's amazing that you're not alone, and I love, letting people know that, and I'm sure you do too.
Yes, they're not alone. You know what? This is one of the most beautiful things is the community that can be built. There are all these parents out there and they're seeking the other parents, right? They're all looking for that sense of community, that sense of being understood. A lot of these parents often talk about feeling unseen, misunderstood, and they end up not hanging out with the parents of the neurotypical kids quite as much anymore because they feel so misunderstood. And they end up feeling like they need to keep everything inside, not to burden everyone else with their stuff, right? So
Hmm.
it's really important to find your tribe for parents. It's important. That community is really key. And for a lot of us, we have a tendency to just stay home and hibernate. And we're so busy and overwhelmed with everything with our kids that we don't make that effort. But that's part of self-love. It's part of self-care to take that time and build that community.
Got it. Well, thank you for that. In our last 5 minutes together, what else did you want to share? Because there's so much that you do with holistic health, child therapy, education, and a lot.
Yes. So I think one of the key things to close off with is really to look at the child as a whole being, right? So when we talk of holistic support, we're really looking at the whole child because we often forget that emotional piece. And it plays a huge role in that child really thriving. So, remembering words like understanding the importance of that child's sense of self, understanding that self-confidence is really key, that you really want to bring to light all those things that are present, that are there. Open yourself up to really seeing them, tuning into their essence, because their essence is not their physical body. Their essence is it's their soul, it's their being, right? And when you can tune into that, you really realize, well, they're already perfect, right?
Hmm.
So when they can feel that emanating from the other person, when that's mirrored back to them, how beautiful and amazing they are because their energy is felt, that child feels wonderful and amazing. And it's really important for them to view themselves that way. We have to remember as parents that we're mirrors for our children,
Yep,
right?
it's so true.
So it's really key. That emotional piece is really key, and it's often forgotten. We're so focused on, the physio and the OT and the speech therapy, and we're not really thinking about that emotional piece, and it's really, really important.
Got it. Oh, thank you for that. And you also blog. And I know you're here always willing to take people's calls and emails. You offer plenty of parenting tips here on the site as well. And I love there's a blog that you did a few months ago about mourning the parenting fantasy. I mean, the fantasy of parenting, right? It's so
Yeah,
true. We all think it's supposed to be a certain way and it's going to be this way, but a lot of times it's not.
it's never the way we thought, right?
Yeah.
Everybody mourns the fantasy of parenting because we expect that we're going to have this certain child, and it ends up being very different than that. And that's really the blessing and the gift because being a parent is really an opportunity to expand and grow and evolve. And it's wonderful. It's a wonderful opportunity.
Got it. All right. And for our last few minutes, what else did you want to make sure that we share for today?
Well, for any parents that are looking to just start dipping their toes and exploring this a little bit more, we've got some beautiful virtual programs. One of which is conversations between myself and professionals that talk about how to create an optimal learning environment for your child to thrive. There's another program that is for parents where myself and another coach have discussions about what it's like, different things that we might experience. And we also offer a lot of self-care within that program for parents. And just to stay tuned, we've got a new program coming out soon. It's going to be a combination of creating an optimal environment for your child, along with some somatic work for the parents. So for the parents to start really tuning into themselves so we can empower them to be able to tune in and connect with the child in a conscious way, just as I've mentioned. Because a lot of parents are probably wondering, well, how do I do that? And so that's where we can support parents.
Got it. Well, thank you for that. And remind us how we can contact you if you don't mind.
Yes, ChristineLabbe.com, ChristineLabbe.com, and by email, Christine@evolvemovement.ca.
Perfect. Thanks so much for being here, for joining us. Always a pleasure to speak with you. And thank you for doing what you do. And you do offer an initial consultation if someone's interested, right? A free of
I
charge
do.
consult?
Yes, free of charge consult, so they can just book that anytime.
Perfect. And how did you want to leave off to those out there who may be in need, who may be a little hesitant to contact you?
You're not alone. You're
Yes.
not alone. Yes, absolutely. You're not alone, and you're fully supported, and there's a lot out there for you. So
Perfect.
much love out there for you.
All right, Christine, ChristineLabbe.com. Reach out to her, book that call. And again, you're able to work with people worldwide, correct?
Yep.
That's the benefit and beauty of it. Thank you so much. All right. Have a great day. And
Thank
to
you.
all of our listeners, we appreciate you. Stay tuned. Hopefully, are we back again next week, Christine?
We are.
All right, good. Looking forward to it. And have a fantastic week.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcasts on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.